Okay. Now we're recording and streaming. Now I'll go ahead and make Tess host.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so, all right, so so I'm going to promote, okay, I'm going to promote all my guys to panelists. Okay, promote to panelist, promote to panelist, promote to panelist, promote to panelist. All right, promote to panelist, good. All right, excellent. So everybody should be here as a panelist now. And we're going to get this meeting started. Steve, thank you for being here. I'm going to do roll. We'll go over minutes and then we can, if after public comment, go straight to Steve Ferguson, who is our guest tonight. So thank you for being here, Steve. All right, so let's see. We have quorum, 1, 2, excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and get this meeting started. We're recording. My name is Tess Taylor. Welcome, everybody. I'm the chair of the Government Affairs Committee for the Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council. It is 6:35 p.m. on Tuesday, July 5th, 2022. Delighted to have everybody here. So I call this meeting to order. Quick roll call. Sean Desharati.
Here.
Let me pull up my agenda. I still have public safety. Catherine Hatton.
Here.
Kelly Cole.
Here.
Reynold Blight.
Here.
Tess Taylor, I am here. We're all here. Excellent. So we now go to approval of the minutes. Review and approve committee minutes. Materials can be found at gtlnc.org. Do I have a first?
Sean.
Sean, thank you. Second?
Ren.
Thank you, Ren. Approve the GTLNC June 7th, 2022 Governmental Affairs Committee minutes. Any comments? Okay, hearing none and seeing none. I will put this to a vote to approve the Governmental Affairs June 7th, 2022 meeting minutes. Catherine, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ren?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Tess is a yes, unanimous, approved, the motion, the minutes pass. Thank you very much, everybody. And now we go to public comment. 2 minutes per speaker on a relevant subject that's not on the agenda. Do we have any comments? If so, please raise your hand. Whoops, I just raised my hand as a demonstration. Do we have any comments? Jonathan Gregory, go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to use my comment time briefly to ask Ren a question. Ren, when you were speaking, you said something that caught my interest, and it was just previous, I'm not sure what meeting. You said that during city council meetings, if I understood you, that's the question. Am I understanding this right? During city council meetings that you were aware of and sat through, you said that council members, while the stakeholders or the public are calling in, they're not even paying attention. They're not even listening. Is that right? Is that true? I mean, is that right?
I'm referring back to quite a while ago when I was, of course, working for the city and we'd go in, staff, we'd go in and, have to sit in council and wait for the agenda to get going. And the public comments were up front. And at least back in those days, at least for my impression was that the council people were almost demonstrably not paying attention to the public comments. And a lot of the public comments, frankly, were off any topic that was on the council agenda or was likely to be on council agenda. And other comments were directly meant to be insulting to various council people or the council as a whole or the mayor. And so it was a lot of things that were frankly extraneous to any public business that you'd consider serious or I'd consider serious. So yes, whether that happens now, of course, during the pandemic, everything was online and that was a different process. And I don't know how it's going to be when we get back started again. City council is back meeting again. So they may require public comment to be only personal. In other words, you'll have to be there at City Hall to make your public comment. But there's some people that are pushing back against that. So it's it's something that is being reinvented, and hopefully there'll be better quality public comments, and city council people will actually listen.
Thanks.
I'd like to add something to that. We're going to be discussing that later on in the agenda, a request for action to whether or not city council should enable online or conference comments via teleconference. But I'm aware of some case law, Ren and Jonathan, that relates to this specifically, wherein it's a school board down in Orange County. I have to look it up, where members of the public who brought a matter before that voting body claimed that the failure for the body to pay attention, which they were most definitely not paying attention, they were chatting and talking on the phone, was a failure to deliberate, and therefore disqualified them from even voting. And that was held to be the case by the court. So I will look that up, because that's actual case law, which I think pertains precisely to this topic. And I think it's important. So thank you for that, Jonathan. We have a hand raised from Steve Ferguson. Steve, go ahead. Did you have a comment on this? Let's see. Are you able to speak? I think you should be able to. Go ahead, Steve.
Apologies. I was just kicked out of the room and I was a panelist before, so I was.
Oh, okay. Let me put you back. I'm going to promote you to a panelist. All right. There we go. Okay. And are there any other comments from the public? Seeing none, hearing none.
Just a reminder for anyone who is dialing in, if you want to raise your hand, you dial *9.
Thank you for that, Catherine. All right, *9, our telephonic attendee. If you wish to make a comment, *9. All right, so with that, we conclude public comment, unless our telephonic participant would like to make a comment. Seeing none, hearing none. Let us go now to the next item on the agenda, which is we're going to skip to the young Steve Ferguson here with us today. So Steve Ferguson is the district director of the 46th district with Assemblymember Adrin Nazarian. He's here today to discuss with us the status of legislation affecting the Greater Neighborhood Council. I thought we would give this portion about 20 minutes and ask Steve to start with. Let's see, Steve, if you could give us sort of an overview about housing, public safety, and homelessness, and then we can talk a little bit about the individual pieces of legislation that are finding their way through the Assembly and the legislature right now.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. And where I will first say I am proud to be the district director to bring information down. If there are follow-up questions, I'm happy to circle back with information as soon as possible. So first things first, when we're talking about these kind of three primary areas of focus, they have taken up the lion's share, I would say, of the conversation in Sacramento around housing. Obviously statewide is an issue, along with homelessness and safety. There are differing opinions within the legislature on how aggressively to tackle these issues. And many of the issues that are discussed are challenging because the state is really engaging in a conversation about really how much local control there should be over these issues. So we see with bills like SB 9 that kind of unilaterally take planning authority away from local jurisdictions and impose density. We're seeing kind of the full spectrum of that within the legislature on how best to approach these issues. What we can expect from the legislature and bills that are headed to the governor's desk, I will say this, just when it comes to the timeline of legislation, the legislature has just wrapped its budget session and it's real budget focused. That is concluded, and really the last month of August really is when you'll see bills from either house finish and head to the governor's desk for signature. There are a number of trailer bills that are still being worked out as it relates to the budget. These bills usually are prescriptive.
Steve, a quick question. You said trailer bills. Do you mean bills that are follow-up bills, or define that?
Correct. So a trailer bill, so the budget is a constitutionally required spending plan.
Okay.
And it's required to be done by, I believe it's July 15th. If it's not done, then the state government shuts down. We saw that about a decade ago.
Okay.
And so what will happen is the legislature will pass the first budget, which is again, the broader spending plan. And then what they'll do is amend how dollars are to be spent, how dollars are to be allocated in subsequent bills.
Okay.
Things that they were not usually able to accomplish by the deadline.
Okay.
Additionally, if the budget is unpopular or if they're getting feedback from constituents, this is also a time to fix those issues. So we're seeing a lot of feedback as it relates to, for instance, the gas tax and the gas tax rebates. So a number of those things are still being worked out, and we'll continue to update as we receive information.
And so those are called trailer bills, or that apply to the budget. And if we have comments on the budget, what is our deadline to submit comments to be considered?
So the budget has already been passed, but for those specific kind of spending, or even if you have really any commentary on spending as opposed to really any commentary, I would say first or second week of August is really the best bet. Just
to recap, because I mean, and I want to be clear as well.
Yeah.
The budget has been voted on and passed, but now the manner in which it's being spent, it's been allocated, but the manner in which it's being spent is subject to comment and some adjustment, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
And these are going to be more minor changes. You're not going to see significant changes, but tweaks or expanding eligibility for certain programs, for instance, that may occur in kind of subsequent bills. This also allows the legislature to see tax revenues come in and better kind of anticipate what they're managing in the year ahead. So that's just kind of where the legislature is at. But again, August is really the month where they are considering the bills that originated in the other house. So the Senate will be considering Assembly bills, and the Assembly will be considering Senate bills. And then there will be reconciliation if there's differences in the bill, and again, sent to the governor, usually by the end of August is when you're going to see that happen. Again, specifically getting to the kind of subjects you've asked me to talk about, first things first is housing. So again, there's a broad spectrum of kind of approaches to this, but what you're generally seeing in legislation that is going to the governor at this point are increased density bonuses, also discussion about raising the height limit of ADUs to 25 feet, which would allow basically second stories. You're also seeing just prescriptive language around allowing up to 1 or 2 bedrooms for ADU units, removing that right from local councils to kind of pick and choose, and really just saying statewide, this is how we're going to do it. So on housing, it is primarily related to density bonuses. It is taking away parking requirements, things like that from local authorities, and instead saying, hey, just get as much housing and incentivize that housing as much as possible. That is what you're seeing on the housing front. In addition, there is a proposal to create a new state agency that would use revenue bonds to construct housing for the purposes of homelessness, to solve the homeless crisis. There is some back and forth between the legislature and the governor, and it is likely, this bill has already passed the legislature, but we are hearing that it will likely be vetoed, as there is already HCD and other housing departments within the state that they feel can handle this. There's some disagreement about that, as obviously we are living the byproduct of the current department, but the department's asking for additional funding and additional authorization, as this bill would allow, to go out, use revenue bonds that are passed by voters, and to spend that kind of from a state level down.
You know, offhand, Steve, which bill that is? There is that 2053, AB 2053.
I have that in my notes. I will kick that to you. I will kick that to you quickly.
Okay.
I find it. But
yeah, because one of those, I believe, is dead. The one that creates the Social Housing Act. But I just want to make sure but we'll get into that in a few minutes when we discuss the specific bills. Great.
Yeah.
Go ahead. This is great.
No problem. I will circle back on that. It is.
Okay.
It's not dead. It has passed both houses, and it's on the.
Okay. Then it's not the same one. Okay.
Right. When it comes to homelessness, what we are finding is a lot of social safety net spending that would be distributed through the counties. You're seeing increases in that, and again, the state really focusing on trying to address homelessness by eliminating local control over planning decisions that tend to slow down the building of housing. So that is going to be the primary focus there. But again, otherwise you're getting because the state is enjoying a lot of one-time money as a result of mostly capital gains tax. So as we head into this inflationary cycle, we are going to likely see dips in that revenue long-term. So as a result, you see a lot of one-time spending being authorized by the legislature and one-time grants to counties to address this problem. So is it an ongoing way to address these problems? Not necessarily. But again, I think everybody is focused on housing as a means to get to this solution. Lastly, when it comes to safety, there are, again, a broad spectrum of philosophies about safety and about really what it takes to keep neighborhoods safe. So what the Assemblymember specifically is focused on is going to be additional screening for law enforcement so that we can kind of restore where there are deficits in trust with law enforcement agencies. So the Assemblymember has introduced a bill, one, that would define statewide with one standard what unconscious bias is and what bias is defined as in policing standards and discipline. Additionally, it would require screening of candidates for police officer roles of their social media accounts to ensure that they are not liking or supporting any kind of terrorist domestic group that is considered a hate group as a part of those pre-screenings. In addition, it would also audit all police agencies statewide to ensure that they are in compliance with this work and with these standards. This has been offered in coordination with a lot of police labor groups who are supportive of this level of training and screening. They are not uniformly supportive of this across the board, but it is very much believed by the legislature that additional levels of training should be in place not just to handle, obviously, direct physical altercations or violent altercations, but also kind of more of this kind of social work-esque work that more and more officers are being expected to really play as this homelessness issue is addressed. So those are kind of broadly the spectrum of kind of tools in which are being deployed at this time, as a lot of these challenges are local issues. The legislature is again wrestling back and forth between how much they get involved and how much they step back. So those are kind of the high level overviews. In addition, the Assembly member is also trying to do a number of things locally for local projects, including bringing dollars home for mental health supports for our police officers. So that way, again, we're checking in with them. We're making sure that they are walking away with tools to de-escalate. And also some dollars to beautify, improve, not just Caltrans adjacent properties, but properties and issues throughout the district. So those budget dollars in many ways have been allocated, but we're hoping to roll out announcements on a few fronts relatively shortly, and those will impact the Toluca Lake community.
Thank you, Steve. That's a very good overview. I have a couple of questions, but before I ask mine, I want to see if any members of the committee or members of the public have any questions about the overview. Let's see. I keep checking, clicking on raise my hand when I check. Okay, Jonathan Gregory, go ahead.
Unmuted?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Steve. Thanks for coming. When I hear, because the whole week I've been receiving pictures of what's going on in the streets.
Yep.
And the predominance of what I see, I'm not a trained psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist, but I look at something, I'm 67 years old, and I say to myself, I'm not looking at the picture of someone who could reasonably be expected to live in a house or an apartment or do anything on their own based on what I'm seeing, because I know when it was last cleaned, so I can see what happened. The question I'm wondering is, coming from Sacramento, is the state, does it have a strategy to deal with institutionalizing people who simply are not taking care of themselves or are addicted? They may not be willing to be institutionalized, but that's not a solution for stakeholders.
Right.
So what do we do? And then the second half of my question is, let's talk about the money and maintenance from California Initiative, because there's $400 million that I can't figure out where 3/4 of it's going. Thanks.
Got it. Happy to. And first of all, I know we need to connect, and so I am playing a little bit of catch up after being out for a little bit. So I still owe you a phone call, Mr. Gregory, but happy to answer your questions now. So first things first, what you do see on the legislative side, again, because of this wrestling over who manages homelessness, is it the homelessness crisis? Is it local authorities? Is it state authorities? Is it county authorities? There's a lot of let's be real, finger pointing, you name it. And really, I think the state is kind of coming down in a hybrid fashion when it comes to providing institutional support for those, for instance, battling addiction, or those who, frankly, are battling mental health challenges that are beyond what standard care can offer support for, and where wraparound services and other additional services are necessary. So what you see actually is the state, which pulled out of mental health institutions, which pulled out of state hospitals, et cetera, looking at, frankly, the opportunity to address what is coming down the pipeline, which is a large aging boom within the state. Our state is getting older, and we expect in the next 10 years, basically 1 in 4 Californians will be retired. And so what you're seeing as a result of that is that you are seeing additional dollars allocated for long-term care facilities, for rehab facilities, and where the state is seeking to build those facilities or augment with contracts. You are seeing them also tack on components for treating individuals who are experiencing homelessness and or people in recovery. That will be a slow and steady march, and it will likely be a slow and steady march, mostly because of the ratios that need to be maintained as required of federal as a requirement of federal law and federal orders that have come from judges. So the state is in the process, I think, in some areas of taking on legally. So I think it was Supervisor Barger's office that referenced, for instance, the ratio of the number of individuals that can be housed within an institution of like 1 to 16, and that being a hard cap. That's something we're living with in a very real way. But that also is where the state is coming in and seeking to alleviate those restrictions that are kind of placed by either judicial authority or federal law or federal agencies, and seeking to raise those across the board so that what is in place can serve more. So it's a multi-pronged strategy. There is some building and some significant spending. There is some approach to trying to approach the federal government in helping us to raise the cap and serve more people. And then there's also additional kind of grants that are being allocated, mostly through the county, to county departments of mental health, et cetera. But I will flag that a lot of those are based on income, obviously, and very much focused on kind of addressing those populations locally. So that's kind of the answer on that front. When it comes to specifically like Caltrans and other spending, the Assemblymember personally is trying to expedite a number of the projects that are covered by Clean California, and a number. So right now, the projected start date for many of those projects is December or January, the end of this year. The Assemblymember is working with Caltrans now to try and expedite those projects and move them up. So that way we can, so some of the more impacted areas of the city can get access to those funds sooner, and those projects can start. So there is money, like you said, that's kind of allocated. I think there's a lot of head scratching as to what's happening in District 7 with Caltrans at times. But I will say, there is a coordinated effort to try and move up some projects that will help alleviate some of these concerns, especially that we're experiencing in the 46th district.
Can I interact a little?
Of course.
Just wanted the numbers of people in District 7, our district, to clean, it's 7 people. I looked at the other 4, or you could say 3 districts. It's east, west, north, and south of LA for the district for Caltrans. They're equally ridiculously staffed. Yeah. And then when I looked at the money from Cal Initiative, 1.1 billion, they've got 415 million for maintenance. And if you just look, and they promised to hire 200 and I think it was 34 people. In that, they're acting like that was for LA. It's not. They presented it like it was for LA. That's the whole state of California. And that only equals to around $100 million. So that means there's $300 million floating around. And you can't say that that's going to someone's pocket to put the garbage into the dump. I don't get it. And are we supposed to actually exist as District 7 with 7 people to clean it? I mean, nothing's getting clean, really. And it's overwhelming. I mean, what these streets are doing to these Caltrans workers, it's not only dangerous, it's just not possible.
That's right.
What is Councilmember Nazarian thinking?
It's Assemblymember, Jonathan.
Assemblymember, thank you, Tess. When he goes to Sacramento, will he be asking for more maintenance workers? So
so what I can say is this on that one, there's no disagreement. And when the Assemblymember whose schedule is relatively back to back from the morning he wakes up to when he goes home, I cannot tell you how often he is on the phone with Caltrans for hour, 2 hours, trying to make sure that certain things are expedited, cleanups are expedited. This man represents 500,000 people, and he is spending hours on the phone trying to get freeways fixed. So there is no one who understands this and is frustrated by this. Than the Assemblymember. Having said that, because of frankly a long track record of working together, there are a number of things that I think can offer you kind of a reason to look up. One, we have a new director of Caltrans who comes from District 7, who understands a little bit more about how these resources and the lack thereof, frankly.
Is that Tosian? Tosian, is that his name?
It starts with a T, correct?
Tosian, okay.
So he has been elevated, and he has been the assembly prior to his appointment. He was the assembly member's primary contact, and quite Tavares. I believe his name is Tavares. Sorry.
Okay. Yes. Yes. Thank you.
So he was the assembly member's primary liaison, who we interacted with on different things. He was the one who helped expedite some of the cleanups that we were able to do a few weeks ago. So one, that is good because we have a Southern California based director who is now seeing this in a different way. Having said that, I think there is internal discussions with the agency, and I don't disagree with you, by the way, on resourcing. I am living with this, and not only obviously are you, but managing all portions of the district that are also, very much impacted by the lack of resourcing that we have here. We're talking about 2-3 months before a cleanup happens, and it's just exhausting. So there are discussions. Again, there are kind of these, because a lot of the state's money that has come in, a lot of the new revenue is one time, you're seeing hesitation to hire long-term staffing. You're seeing hesitation to do kind of the long-term fixes that could fix this, and instead focus on how do we allocate one-time money to potentially local agencies like counties and cities who can better address this and more compassionately address these issues. Once they're moved off of Caltrans property, et cetera. So I will say, unfortunately, we're caught in a little bit of a policy discussion about what the role of Caltrans should be. Caltrans has always obviously said, hey, we're going to maintain freeways, we're going to maintain roadways. But what they haven't been is a social service organization. And so as their mission has now evolved, they are looking at what the realistic staffing implications of that decision-making is. Does that mean they already, for instance, have limited numbers of social workers to interact with individuals experiencing homelessness? But a lot of folks are wondering if Caltrans should have a team of social workers. So those are the discussions. Unfortunately, we're caught in a lot of it. But I will say that the assembly member is, one, trying to expedite what projects and funding can help alleviate that. Again, some of the hardscaping, fencing repair, upgrading the level of fencing so you just don't have chicken wire that's poured over the same hole over and over again and cut through. So it really is a resourcing question that you properly identified. I think the staffing issue will probably be a long-term battle, just to be real. But the one-time money, capital improvements, things like that can better serve our freeways and the adjacent properties, those can be expedited faster, and we hope to announce something relatively soon.
Let me cut in here to see if anybody else has questions on just the general topics that we've discussed before we go to a little bit of a bill by bill discussion and analysis. Any more questions from members of the committee or the public? Do we have anyone in the public? No. All right. So thank you for that overview, Steve. Before I have a couple questions myself, but to close out Jonathan's remarks, is there anything that we can do as a neighborhood council that would help you and the assembly member to put greater focus on these initiatives and these areas? Can we advocate with the council member Krikorian to do something with the assembly member? What practical steps can we take to enable you to do your job and put focus in this community?
Well, first I'm going to acknowledge you have already been incredible partners in continuing to escalate issues, frankly, and to reach out in your own way. Mr. Gregory, I think is sending off emails and holding people to account, which is great because we're seeing it and we're following up in real time. So that's first, and I just want to thank you for your partnership in that, because let's be real, that shouldn't be you shouldn't be taking hours out of your day to deal with that. Having said that, where the council in particular community impact statements help. They
Okay.
really do. Talking about impacts of and how much time is being committed and resourcing, et cetera, to these issues, whether it is, and obviously we're living it, moving off of Caltrans or county property and then onto city property and then back and forth. This is something that's exhausting, and it's exhausting for homeowners, for residents, you name it. So community impact statements that really, one, illustrate the issues locally and how they're impacting your community, allow us, frankly, a hard document to bring to folks and say, folks are fed up. We can obviously anecdotally share that and then escalate it to the assembly member level when it gets there. But those community impact statements related to additional work that needs to be done around specific project areas or specific focus areas, those are helpful.
Good. So you know what, when we have something relative or relevant, I'll make sure you get a copy. Catherine Hatton has her hand up. Go ahead, Catherine.
I was just going to note, my understanding when it comes to community impact statements is that, at least for when a neighborhood council is submitting this, it has to be attached to a Los Angeles City Council file number. So what would be your recommendation for identifying city council files that relate to something at the state level?
Thank you for your question, Catherine. I think so. One, if there's not a specific project area or specific council file number that you can affix to, the other strategy might be just resolutions. If you have the ability to pass resolutions, that too could be helpful. So if it's not anchored specifically to a project area or a specific project before the council, again, general resolutions work. But it's also nice, again, if you tack on a community impact statement and say, hey, this development's going on, there's a Caltrans adjacent property to that, we would like to make sure that there are fixes in place for that. Things like that are just, I think, considerations that you can make. But how you, again, if you can't go the CIS route because there is no council file number and it really is a state-based issue, any kind of either letter or resolution really give us the ability to kind of go, hey, look, local officials here are trying to push this and we need to move. Right.
And we have something like that on the agenda later today. So, a resolution request for action. So Catherine, anything else? You still have your hand up?
No, that was it.
Thank you. Ren Blight, go ahead. You're muted, Ren. Go ahead.
Here we go. Okay, I just wanted to mention that we have the possibility of doing a CIS on the city council's position on state legislation. The city council has a whole agenda of stands on a whole wide range of state measures. So if we wanted to do a CIS on a topic in front of up in Sacramento, most likely there's a position that the city council has taken on that legislation, and then we can comment on our CIS to the city council, but of course forward it to Adrin and everybody in Sacramento.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Ren. That's great. Sean, did you have a question?
I did, and it was kind of Catherine's question kind of semi-answered it. I was going to see if there was any reference to specific city council action or a file numbers that we could actually reference that maybe are fresh in your mind, so that we could provide that CIS to maybe kind of help further both of our movement forward with specifically with Caltrans.
Have any recent ones that you can think of that have been helpful to you, Steve?
We have worked with the council office on a few fronts when there have been pending projects. It was about a month ago, so I don't have file number offhand. Having said that, what a part of the strategy that Tiffany from CD2 and Jason from the supervisor's office and I are all kind of doing is wherever we can tack on, hey, there's additional need here, we're doing that. So one, what I can do is, from our perspective, as we see projects or council file numbers that could impact, I will circle back and make sure that the neighborhood council is at least aware, hey, there's a Caltrans adjacent property here. You may want to consider, tacking on. And obviously that's out of the greatest respect because you all get to do what you want to do. Having said that, but just offering when there are projects, how we can pull that together.
Very good. Thank you, Sean. So a couple questions and comments for me related to your overview, and then we'll go to some piece-by-piece legislation. So there was an item that came out on NBC just a few weeks ago, June 14th. It's called "Let Me Explain Why Are People Leaving California?" It's a 1-minute clip. And the highlights are this, that over 360,000 people left the state in 2021. It's being called the California Exodus. This is one of the most expensive states to live in. The average home price is nearly $800,000, and only 25% of the state's households can afford that.
Right.
All right. So those are just highlights. Also, the population growth in California has been declining for over 30 years. But thanks to the rise in remote work, those trends are accelerating. So more people are leaving. We have the highest gas prices in the country, and 62% of Americans are considering moving to another country. So again, those are just the highlights. So these are facts, and housing and density was the topic that got me fired up to get locally involved. So I've really dug into this and read a lot about it. How does the Assembly member reconcile these facts with the state legislature's housing crisis declaration, which I believe is a false narrative? All right. And I believe that it is largely, this is me speaking, not the neighborhood council. All right. That it is developers' propaganda that affordable housing will emerge from greater building and population density when we are seeing density in population decline. So that's my question.
Yeah, so I think that there is a greater focus from the Assembly member on just overall trying to really address kind of the bad actors in the situation, right?
Okay.
So one, we have a number of, for instance, overseas corporations that are coming up, consuming large amounts of housing, and then either holding it vacant or frankly renting it. So there's, that's not helping in certain areas. But again, I think this is a part of the battle that you're seeing within the legislature between, focus, a lot of, for instance, in the Bay Area, representatives there are very focused on density at all costs. They don't care. Single family housing is a way of the past. We need to build, build, build. And I think the Assembly member is really kind of focused on one, this is a decade upon decade made problem that's not going to get solved overnight. That there are areas for density that could be developed, but there are areas that certainly need to be protected. That it would dramatically change the nature of communities. But what you're also seeing just generally is I think, frankly, as you cited, between the 360,000 folks who are leaving, you're also seeing K through 12, obviously, with declining enrollment to the point where I think we lost 600,000 students across the state out of 6 million, so roughly 10% of all California students. You are seeing a reimagining of services generally, of densities generally, of what these institutions and how these institutions will continue to serve communities. As both people work remotely, as folks get older, and there are fewer needs for these kind of social services. So to answer it specifically, there's a lot of bad actors. There's a lot of, frankly, protectionists thinking that doesn't allow density to develop where density does need to develop. There's a lot of rush to density where density is not historically the norm. And so I think what the Assembly member has tried to be, SB 9 being an example of that, is that middle of the road focus that says, hey, there's a way to do both, but we need to up the pressure on local agencies to deliver, as opposed to shifting blame to the county or the state or the feds, and really get, the focus local.
Okay, well, a few sort of follow-on comments, and then we'll move to the next section, which is, I'm not sure if you're aware, but I can send you a press release. There are now, I think, 6 or 7 cities that have coordinated to in a lawsuit to push back on SB 9. All right, and there's a push for more cities to join in on that. The taking away of local control has really got a lot of people very upset. And I want to challenge the narrative of the need for housing. I believe the narrative is wrong, and it's been vigorously promoted as being wrong. The McKinsey report, which was the report that came out several years ago, it uses faulty data to arrive at the housing projections. The RENA numbers have been shown to have used faulty methodology. In fact, I'm attending a meeting about that tomorrow. And the RENA numbers are the regional housing needs assessment, which is causing specific numbers of units to be built on a region by region, county by county basis. There's a big problem with that methodology and those numbers, which have been inflated. And homelessness. Clearly, we have a problem, and there's a fix that's required, but virtually none of the legislation actually addresses or provides affordable housing. It's all an if, when, maybe kind of a formula, which never quite yields that affordable housing. Plus, we have the variable of the number of homeless here now, today, and many more streaming in constantly. So, it's like a never-ending kind of catch-up game. So those are just some items I wanted to put on the table, that the narrative has to be challenged and looked at very, scrutinized very carefully, because I think a lot is being made on faulty data. So Catherine Hatton has her hand up. Go ahead, Catherine.
Yeah, I mean, I would appreciate more explanation from you about what exactly is faulty about the methodology. And I also think that, while I don't disagree, and again, this is me speaking personally, while I don't disagree that building more housing is the answer, or I agree with you that building more housing may not be the answer, but there is a lack of housing. Like, that is the problem. If you try to look to buy a home in our area, there's not a lot available. And that, whatever price point you're looking at, and that is a reality. And I think likely a contributor to why people are leaving the state. They are leaving because there is not housing available, and people are having fewer children because they can't afford what housing is available. To speak to Steve's point about the drop in K through 12 enrollments.
Well, if you're asking me, Catherine, so the Embarcadero report goes into great depth about the problem with the McKinsey report, I could summarize it, but I don't want to take up the time. I'll put a link in the next agenda for people to look at. But in quick bullet point fashion, the problems with the methodology of the RENA numbers are as follows. The vacancy rates are inconsistent. There are improper benchmarking and comparisons that have been made. There have been omissions, overcount, inconsistency in housing unit projections, lack of documentation and methodology to support the findings. And that comes from the California State Auditor, Michael Tilden. I will put a link to that as well in the meeting minutes and the agenda, so that you can look at that. And this is something that is, I think, very important, and we should discuss. And I believe it's a chicken and the egg thing, Catherine. Not being able to find housing stock is because it's all being bought up so quickly by investors, frankly. So that's a huge problem, and I agree with that. So unless there are any further comments and questions on this, let's go to bill by bill overview. Does anybody have any questions before we move to the next section? And I want to be conscious of Steve's time. We're already going a little bit into overtime. Steve, are you able to stay with us for a few more minutes, or?
I absolutely am. Absolutely.
Okay, well, because I like to keep my promises, and we're already in overtime with you. So, but thank you for staying with us. So let's see here. We have a standing agenda item, pending legislation tracking. And in the next agenda, I've hyperlinked some of these. In the next agenda, all of them will be hyperlinked. A few of these are from Ren, and I've been tracking them. So Ren, the first one, AB 2006 Berman, regulatory agreements, compliance monitoring. Did you have any update on that? You're muted.
Sorry. No,
Okay.
I'm not.
No problem. Okay, and moving on to the next one on the list, AB 2053. This would enact the Social Housing Act and create the California Housing Authority and mixed income housing. But as of June 30th, this one's dead. So I don't know, did you look, do you have the bill number that of the piece of legislation you referred to earlier, Steve?
Not yet. It is.
Okay.
I'm waiting for it.
All right, so that's dead, no comment necessary. AB 2097 related to land use parking requirements. This was amended on the 23rd, has been referred to the Committee on Appropriations, and AB 2097. I personally oppose and recommend that we oppose, but again, that's me personally. And 2097 is, it's got all kinds of problems. It offers cost savings to developers with no requirements to increase parking for higher density levels. It imposes a hardship on people who need a car. It raises safety concerns for people who are leaving work or returning home late at night and who have to walk to and from remote street parking. And those are a couple of the issues. Is there any position that the Assembly member has taken on that, Steve?
So the Assembly member did not support that.
Okay.
And he unfortunately did not record a vote on it because he was in committee at the time. But
Okay.
that was his. There's no recorded vote on that, and there was an opposition.
Okay. So good. All right. Moving right along, unless there are questions at any time from the committee or from the public, just raise your hand. I just want to move through these, as quickly as we can, but taking time as needed. So 2186, AB 2186, Housing Reduction Incentive Program. That's amended and been referred to Committee on Appropriations. I believe this might have been one that you added, Ren. I have no position to recommend here at the moment. Do you have any thoughts on that, Ren? Okay. Has the Assembly member voted on that, Steve?
Yeah, he voted to support that bill.
Okay, so Adrin supports. All right. AB 2244, WIX, Religious Institution Affiliated Housing, Co-located Place of Worship. That's in the Assembly now. It's been ordered to, I didn't understand this notation in the legislative file. It's been ordered to engrossing and enrolling. Can you explain what that means, Steve? Do you know?
So basically, it's a procedural move to delay.
Oh, procedural dilute. Okay. And does the Assembly member have a position on that?
If you, could you give me the bill number again? I apologize.
AB 2244.
2244. I'm searching that right now. Not offhand, but I am pulling it up. 2244. At this point, the Assembly member voted yes on that.
Okay. Adrin, yes. And the fact is that I can look up his votes myself, so never mind that unless you know offhand.
I have a list here, so
okay.
I'm happy to send that your way.
Oh, that would be great. That would be great. I would actually love to see that if you would be so kind.
Absolutely.
So moving right along, AB 2334, the density bonus law, affordability incentives or concessions in very low vehicle travel areas. It's been amended and re-referred to Committee on Appropriations. AB 2334, what is his position?
2334, I believe that was one of the, hold on. So he voted to support that.
Okay, I am sad to hear that because I oppose it, but I will, I'll make my opinion known. Very good. If there are any comments, anybody just raise your hand or jump in. Moving right along to SB 1100, the Brown Act updates. It's been passed from committee, read a second time in order to a third reading. This is related to, there's a couple related to Brown Act and open meetings and public comment. Does anyone on the committee have a comment on this or support or oppose position? Ren, did you put this on the agenda, Ren?
Yeah, I think I may have. I believe this was something to make it, easier to deal with people who are disrupting meetings during
Okay.
the comment period, to create some discipline around that. And I don't know how seriously the legislature is taking it.
Okay,
They are, sorry.
go ahead.
If I go, okay. The legislature is taking this very seriously. So one, the legislature itself has been shut down. It's not subjected to the Brown Act, I will say that. But there are a number of school board meetings, city council meetings, et cetera, it has been the tactic to shut them down by screaming. The current Brown Act allows, obviously, after multiple warnings, to expel somebody from a meeting, the presiding officer. This would strengthen that and certainly give kind of expedited ability to warn and remove from the chamber so that business can occur.
Did I hear you correctly, Steve, that you said the legislature is not subject to the Brown Act?
That's correct.
Really?
The Brown Act was passed by the legislature to control the locals. But the Brown Act itself, there are still noticing requirements, things like that for pieces of legislation, but that's separate above and beyond. The Brown Act controls local government agencies and county agencies.
But not the state legislature. Wow.
They write their own rules. So yes.
Holy mackerel. I just learned something important today. Golly. Okay. Holy mackerel. Okay. Thank you for that. Moving down the list, SB 948, Becker, Housing Finance Programs, Development Reserves. I think this was yours, Ren. It's been passed to committee, re-referred to Committee on Appropriations as of the 29th of June. Ren, did you have any thoughts or comments on that?
No, but it doesn't help. I think their legislature is trying to get some funding behind various housing, especially low-income housing programs.
Okay. Does the Assembly member have a position on this one, Steve?
No position yet, as it's a Senate bill that hasn't made it out of committee yet. Unless it's the committee he's on, which is Health, or Budget Committee 4, or Transportation, he won't take a position until later.
Okay.
But we're absolutely receptive to feedback on those pieces.
Okay.
Obviously.
Great. AB 682, Planning and Zoning Density Bonus. The position that I personally take is support if amended. It's referred to Committee on Appropriations. Does the Assembly member have a position on that yet?
I'm pretty sure that was a yes, because that was brought up. I am looking at this right now. Yes, yes, he voted to support it.
Okay, good. I'll get notes over later, but this, all right, very good. AB 916, hearing what you said about the 25-foot height increase is somewhat worrisome.
Yep.
So this has been passed on a past committee on the 30th, and it's been re-referred to the Committee on Appropriations. And let me guess, he's going to support this, right?
He supported this.
Okay.
But certainly, we have certainly heard this would allow additional bedrooms. But I believe that the height is where he has had the most concern, as it would then create potential privacy issues. So that is something he's been navigating. I don't know how specifically that's landed in the discussions, but that's where his head has been at.
Okay, well, that's actually very good to know, because his head and mine are in the same place.
There we go.
Sean, you've become somewhat of an ADU expert. Are you, do you have any comments on this or questions, Sean? I guess that's a no. So moving right along to.
Sorry, no.
Okay.
I'm just actually taking it all in. Thank
Okay,
you.
good. All right. So AB 916, we just went over that. Okay. So these are related to blended meetings, and there was a mistake in the agenda. I took these two bills from a Department of Neighborhood Empowerment legislative update, and they actually had one of the numbers transposed, which I recognized later when I was looking it up. So AB 1944 and AB, it says 2499, but it should be 2449. These are related to open and blended meetings. And let's see. I personally, I have no position on 1944 at the moment, but I oppose AB 2449 unless it's amended. It creates a limitation that I think is potentially problematic, and about meeting access and but I won't go into detail, but does the assembly member have a position on either or both of these, AB 1944 and AB 2449, Steve?
Yes, he supported both of them.
Okay. Both. Good. All right. So then I'm going to skip the city council file. We can discuss that amongst ourselves later because it's a city council file and doesn't impact the state, but it's, it's related to, it seems to be related to the Assembly Bill AB 244, religious institution affiliated housing. It's a LA City Council file 220158 regarding homeless shelters in R1 districts. But skipping over that just for the moment and going to ACA 14, which is a California Assembly constitutional amendment put forward by Wicks, Bennett, Carrillo, and Rivas, authorizes development, construction, or acquisition of developments composed of urban or rural dwellings, et cetera, et cetera. There's a link to the text in the agenda. Is the assembly member supportive or in opposition to that?
I believe he supported it moving to the ballot,
Okay.
and that will need to go before voters.
Okay. Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you for that. So I am, unless anybody else has any questions for you, Steve, let's see, Jonathan Gregory. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Thanks. Steve, just before you leave, there's something you said that I want to go back to, but I want to preface it by telling you that I am personally so grateful that you're here to help us, because I think, based on what I see, that Caltrans is like an open bleeding wound through Greater Toluca Lake, that if we could get Caltrans under control, it's an enabler of a lot of bad consequences to the community, starting at Cahuenga and Pass all the way through to West Toluca Lake. It isn't just West Toluca Lake. The filthiest place I saw when I was there last was Cahuenga, right there near the village, where lots of wealthy people live. What I wanted to do before you leave is ask you two things, always multiples, is I read lots of reports and I saw such insanity that it questioned my love affair with California. You said Caltrans has, I think you called them counselors or social workers. First question, what on earth does Caltrans do with social workers? Here's my second question. Before you leave us, I would really appreciate, I'm going to run you by a couple names just from the top of my head. You tell me who among these people gets to decide or will decide how many maintenance workers we have in District 7, because to me, if we don't have maintenance workers, we will never have cleanliness. So the names are the governor. Why am I drawing a blank? What's his name? Our governor.
Gavin Newsom.
Newsom.
Right, Governor Newsom. And then we have Laura Friedman of the that's the committee. Certainly Adrin Nazarian. our assembly member. Then we have Tavares of District 7. Then we have an interesting name that if you don't know who it is, I'll tell you a little bit. Her name is Melissa Martinez, appointed by Governor Newsom to something called the Commission, having to do with freeways and putting money into different pockets and stuff.
Jonathan, which commission? The
I don't
Commission of
remember the name.
I think it's Commission of Transportation, isn't
Yes,
it?
there you go. And it has to do with allocating money. So my question is, who is the person or persons that clearly I am going to focus that will be deciding either to refuse to increase the number of workers or will increase them? Who is it? You know?
Yeah, so ultimately, Mr. Tavares is now the director of Caltrans. So he is going to be making a lion's share of the administrative decisions for the department within their own decision-making process around budget. Assemblywoman Friedman, who is running to represent Toluca Lake in the area, she is currently the chair of the Transportation Commission, the Transportation Committee of the Assembly, which is fairly influential, but she will certainly have prerogative over broader spending priorities, but not necessarily as prescriptive to say hire 2 more people. So just know that. But I would recommend, it's always probably good to CC an elected office with an appointed official, if it just for the sake of transparency's sake. So I would continue to work with Mr. Tavares and then CC the Assembly office. So that way we can kind of play a backstop. But those are going to be ultimately the folks who can make the higher level decisions. Again, I would say Assemblywoman Friedman, Assemblymember Nazarian, they are focused on the broader policy and broader spending requirements, but obviously they can get as prescriptive as they'd like. But where we are at in the legislative calendar, I would just encourage you to one, reach out as you do, and to CC us. They tend to move a little bit faster, and it allows us to frankly escalate things within our offices in a way that, basically we can't be coined Chicken Little when we've got emails from members of the community who are being very sincere and saying, hey, what's happening? Your email today with the chain on the fence, ridiculous. But it allows us to then follow up and go, look, so we can't be treating our public like this. They're the ones who put us in business. So, and not to try and in any way placate you, but truly, I think your emails and the way that you send them to Mr. Tavares and CCing an elected office is a really effective route.
Okay,
Thank
thanks.
you.
And about social workers with Caltrans?
Sorry, social work. So briefly, yes. So so the way it kind of works on our end, you obviously have reached out to Allison in the Department of Transportation. She handles public relations and PIO for the department. We have legislative liaisons, one that focuses on graffiti and litter cleanup, and the other that focuses on encampment issues. The individual who is our liaison who works on those and these folks work strictly with legislative offices. They may be included they could be included in email chains, but more than likely they are directly responsive, and their roles are supposed to be responsive to legislative offices. And so the individual who handles encampments as a part of their tool chest have teams that include social workers who approach different encampment cleanups in an effort to, so you'll usually have a pairing of a sanitation crew, a grounds crew, a law enforcement official that could be local or state, CHP, and then usually a social worker that attempts to make contact and connect the individuals with resources.
Okay, thanks. I don't want to take up any more time, but thank you very much. I want to talk to you on the phone too. Thank you.
We'll follow up. Absolutely, sir.
Very good. Steve, you've gone into overtime. I really appreciate it. I want to just say personally, I appreciate you very much and your responsiveness and helping to actually solve problems. And for everyone here, I want you to know that Steve actually helped to get a California citizen in Assemblymember Nazarian's district out of the Ukraine on an emergency basis. So this guy can do just about anything. And we appreciate you very much, Steve. So huge round of applause for Steve Ferguson, District Director for Adrin Nazarian, District 46. Thank you very much. I'd love to follow up with you and get his, what you mentioned earlier, and we'll be in touch, Steve. Thank you for being here.
No problem. Thanks again for the opportunity. I'm here for anybody. And yes, we did get somebody out of the Ukraine. That was real. This job is, it's the greatest privilege to be able to serve this community as well. So again, thank you for the opportunity, and I will circle back with the information, and anybody who needs to reach out, we can grab coffee, call me. I'm happy to engage. So thank you again for the time.
Very good. Thank you. All right. So good plan, Ren, to have a legislative update. So moving forward, was this helpful to you guys? Shall we do this again with somebody from the city legislative office? Ren, Kelly, Catherine, Jonathan, Sean?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I think
Okay.
so.
Should we be asking different questions? I thought we would take the first half as a broad issue that concerns Greater Toluca Lake, and the second half devoted specifically to specific bills and legislation. Is everybody okay with that? Very good. All right. Any suggestions, comments, or that sort of thing? Always welcome. All right. So moving right along down the agenda. Let's see here. Where are we?
Going back up
Okay.
to
Let me get back to the agenda. All right. So I've been taking some notes here. This is good. So now we get to, let's see.
we went through all the bills. Probably the last thing you want to do is the council file.
The council file, right. Okay. Council file number 22-0158, brought forward by Bonin, Rahman, and Blumenfeld regarding homeless shelters in R1 districts. We discussed this at our board meeting last week, or last month, and it's I looked into this, and there's a lot of strong opposition CISs that have been filed by at least 7, maybe more neighborhood councils, and public opposition as well. Now there are supporting CISs from several neighborhood councils, but as you know, we tried to pass a CIS on this last month. I believe it's being brought forward for reconsideration and clarification because there was some confusion as to no, sorry, that's a different one. But I don't have any further updates on that other than to report the opposition and the support from various neighborhood councils. I took a look at the council file this afternoon. So unless anybody has any comments or updates on that, we can go to the next item.
Yeah, the legislation.
Didn't we passed a CIS opposing this?
The CIS that we discussed at the last.
There were 2 of them. One of
two.
them passed, and it was this one. And then one of them did not pass, and that was in
Okay.
relation to the public libraries.
The public library. Okay, yes. So, and actually, thank you for that, Catherine. So who are the official
I am the
submitters?
submitter, and I need to submit that. I've been
Okay,
unable to submit it for the last week, but that is on my list of things to do this
Okay.
week.
how many submitters are there among the neighborhood council? I believe there can be up to 5, correct?
There can be up to 5. Presently, there are 2. It will be a board action at this month's annual meeting to select our CIS holders. There must be 2 according to our bylaws and standing rules, but there can be up to 5.
Okay, so currently it's you and Colby, is that right?
Currently, yes.
Okay, and then you're going to submit that this week, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Ren, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to comment, this has a 45 report back on this, the council level. So we may not hear anything till after our meeting and maybe late in the month. But they'll get back to this. They'll get all the reports and comments and all that and begin to modify this. I think it certainly clearly needs to be focused in a whole lot of ways. And I think
Yes.
the council will do that at their next meeting, their committee meeting when they get there.
Yes, and there's been a whole bunch of commentary on the council file, which I was looking at today. So this one is getting a lot of action. So, all right, very good. Thank you for that. Moving right along. The next item is, and by the way, so that concludes the legislative updates from me, pending legislation tracking. Are there any issues, bills, or city council files that anyone would like to add to review or to agendize for our next meeting? If you know any right off the top of your head now, let me know. And certainly you can, submit them over the next couple of weeks. Any spring to mind, Ren, Sean, Catherine, Kelly, Jonathan? Okay, so very good. I'm going to be adding a couple, but you'll see those on the next agenda. So moving right along to item number 8, new business and future projects. Discussion and possible vote. Item A, the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment wants to rename the Budget Advocates account to, quote, budget advocacy. I learned about this when I attended a budget advocate meeting recently. This is problematic as it could redirect funds from an intended purpose without the neighborhood council's approval. So is everybody clear on what this means and what it would do? Does anybody have any questions? Any discussion on the matter?
I wasn't aware of
We can't
this.
discuss the matter until we open the motion.
Okay.
Okay.
So let me open the item for discussion. Do we have a first?
Sean?
Sean,
Did
thank
you read the motion?
Okay, I thought we had to open it first. Okay, I will
You
read the motion.
then you ask for a first and second on the motion.
Thank you, Catherine. I will read it now. Okay, so motion B. The Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council opposes Council File 1-102-S3. Neighborhood councils form alliances when they want to join together to work on something of common interest. Our neighborhood council wants the ability to direct our funds to a specific alliance and not to a fund allocated without our input. Do I have a first? Opening this for discussion.
Ren?
Sean?
Okay, Sean, let's go with you first and Ren second. Thank you. All right, any discussion?
So I understand that there's been concern expressed that this will reroute funds, but at least the way I'm reading it, there's nothing in the way it's written to suggest they're planning to reroute funds, simply change the name of the account.
Well, there's no need to change the name of the account. And this was brought up by the budget advocates themselves. So this is a concern emanating from them, and which I happen to agree with, having attended one of those meetings. And I agree. If something is being allocated to the budget advocates, then it will go specifically to them. They are a specific group. But if it were to go to budget advocacy, then that is a broader definition that could be construed to be something other than the budget advocates themselves specifically. Does that make sense? So that's all there is to it. There's a link here if you wanted to read the council file, Catherine. So
I did read the council file.
thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, hearing none, shall we put this to a vote? All right, so voting on motion B, I will repeat it. The Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council opposes Council File 11-1020-S3. Neighborhood councils form alliances when they want to join together to work on something of common interest. Our neighborhood council wants the ability to direct our funds to a specific alliance and not to a fund allocated without our input. Sean, how do you vote?
I oppose it. So I'm not sure if we vote yay to oppose or nay to oppose. So it's whatever to oppose.
Okay.
Are you opposing the motion to oppose it, or are you supporting the motion to oppose it?
Supporting the motion to oppose it. Sorry.
And
for
you
the
Okay,
vote
so you
yes.
vote-
Then I vote
you
yes.
vote
Thank you.
Okay. Ren,
Yes.
Catherine,
No.
Kelly,
Yes.
and I'm a yes, so it passes. Motion passes for, is it 401 or 410?
410. It's yay, nay, abstain.
Got it. Okay, 410. Very good. Thank you. And so since this is this is a CIS. So do I need to do anything further, Catherine, to get to you to submit?
This is not passed by the neighborhood council. This
Oh,
is
right,
passed by
right.
our committee. It
Ah,
needs
yes.
to go
Okay,
on the
so
general
this-
meeting agenda.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Got it. All right. Moving right along to B. Opening it for discussion. This is motion C. Let me open it for discussion and then read the motion. Or do I read it first? Sorry, I'm just getting I'm getting used to this.
You read the motion, you ask for a first and a second to open
Okay.
discussion on the motion.
Thank you, Catherine. All right, motion C, the Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council requests the LA City Council again allow remote participation in city council meetings by telephone or online means, in addition to in-person comment. Do I have a first to open this for discussion?
Ren.
Bren, thank you.
Sean.
Sean, second, thank you. All right, so I think it's self-explanatory. Urging reinstatement of remote public comment at LA City Council meetings. The LA City Council has recently stated that, quote, members of the public may also attend city council meetings in person, but public comment will be taken in person only and not via teleconference. And there's concern that this will, people would like the opportunity to comment telephonically or via teleconference. And I agree with that. I think that's important. To have to drive downtown to park and go through security and go through the procedure to be there, to be able to comment for only 1 minute when so much of it is ignored as per Ren's earlier comments. I think being able to do so in via teleconference is very important. So thoughts and discussion.
I'm not sure how the remote is going to work. So people would do a written comment. I assume it would have to be a particular length. In other words, 1 minute's worth of comment. Would that then be read out loud at City Council, or would it be just entered into the record, or how would it impact?
Well, it's not clear since they have basically declared that there's no telephonic in-person, no telephonic public comment now. How that would work, I assume, is a blended version of the in-person meetings with the ability to teleconference as well. I don't know that one would have to submit one's comment in advance. I believe it would work the way it worked up until now during COVID, but it's not clear. That hasn't been defined because telephonic public comment is being excluded with the resumption of the in-person meetings. So that's what this is about. Does that make sense, Ren? Okay. Any other comments? All right. So, Jonathan, go ahead. Your hand's up.
Sorry, I'm just wondering, before you take a vote on this, Do any of you happen to know why this was ever suggested? Because there must be a reason, and I can't think of it. Who is the beneficiary of this?
Well-
Clearly, a stakeholder in Greater Toluca Lake doesn't want to get in the car and drive all the way downtown in order to be heard. Who wants this, and why would they want it? Thanks. Does anyone know? If not, that's good.
Who wants the ability to
Who's
comment?
suppressing? Who's suppressing? Who wants to suppress the ability to phone in?
Well, it would appear the LA City Council. This is just an edict that came out, and I picked this up at one of the meetings that I attended, and now that in-person meetings are coming back, there's City Hall is reopened, and I think there was a scare, and I'm not sure if it's open now or not. I see no basis for suppressing public comment at all. I mean, the more public comment, the better, in my opinion.
I suspect that this is not intended to suppress public comment. That may be the effect, because I wholeheartedly agree. No one wants to drive to downtown, especially given how sprawling our city is and the times that these meetings are usually held at. For a lot of people, it would be hard to take off work to make that trip there and back. But I suspect that this is simply a plan to return to form, because that's how it used to be. I believe prior to the pandemic, there wasn't a telephonic option. You had to be in person.
Well, I think in person is always desirable, but now that opportunity and that option has been made available by way of the pandemic, the silver lining of the pandemic, you might say, I think it's important to retain it. So Kelly, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Well, as someone who has attended several city council meetings prior to COVID, I will say that I haven't noticed what Ren had pointed out. I in my times that I have been there listening to public comment, I have felt that the council was listening and paying attention. I mean, not that they were necessarily agreeing, but even in person, there were quite a lot of frivolous commenters. There were quite a lot of people who were wasting time. And I would be concerned that if people didn't have to go through the difficulty of getting themselves down there and signing up and waiting their turn, and the fairly high pressure situation where you're speaking in front of often a packed room, and a lot of people are not that comfortable with public speaking. I felt like the people who were not the frivolous ones really cared about the things they were talking about. And I think if it was very, very easy for the public to call in, the level of just
Frivolity,
more frivolous call-ins, and the more it'd be so easy to call in that you just get endless amounts of comments of people that really had no business being there. And so it's sort of a test of how committed you are if you're going to go down there to talk.
well, I agree with that. I'm part of that, and I have a follow-on comment, but go ahead, Ren, you have your hand up.
Yeah, as I mentioned, watching all of this over a period of years, and I think Kelly's right. There certainly are people who come in and make serious comments, and typically what happens at that point, the council deputy will pay attention especially if somebody from regular council person's district, and they will go over and talk to the person, and there will be real input there. I think the 1 minute over the phone is just going to be unfortunately, the serious people who are making a serious comment will be drowned out by all the frivolous and useless comments. So I think it's I'm going to vote no on this. Actually, I don't see that it does much good. 1 minute is not enough time to cover a topic in any kind of serious way. And if you really believe something, you need to call or write a council person, not take a minute during city council. So I'm going to vote no on that.
Well, I thank you for that, Ren. I disagree because, and Kelly, to your point, I've attended a lot of these meetings, and from time to time I will comment, and it's harder to do than you think, because if you don't get in at exactly the right time, sometimes the queue is full, sometimes you get bumped for technical reasons, sometimes you get bumped because you've messed it up. So I think it still requires a commitment to make a comment by phoning in, and I personally am for as much public comment as possible. And just because someone is phoning in telephonically doesn't mean that they're less serious. There are plenty of worthwhile public comments made by people phoning in, and they're not all clowns or puppets. So I think it's worthwhile. So I will vote yes on this. So Kelly, did you still, okay, you took your hand down. Unless there are any other comments, we can put this to a vote. Jonathan, go ahead.
Just a quick question to Ren might know the answer to this because he has a lot of experience there. Is if you're a stakeholder in Greater Toluca Lake, can you write a letter to City Council about a specific issue and have that included as if you had spoken? Do you know?
You could, yes. There are two ways you would do that. You could send it directly to our council representative. And that way you'd probably get more attention, but you could also send it to the chair of the committee, is presenting or is responsible for a particular motion to council. And it would go into the file.
Yeah. Thanks. See, I think that's important because I think what you said, Ren, and what Kelly said is, yeah, if you got people phoning in, suddenly there have been issues even at a neighborhood council where it becomes unmanageable. Imagine for the city of Los Angeles, maybe that's what they had in mind. Thanks.
Well, thank you. And you can always also go online and post a comment to the city council file itself, if there is a city council file. So, all right, well, why don't we go ahead and put this to a vote? I will reread the motion. Motion C, the Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council requests that LA City Council again allow remote participation in city council meetings by telephone or online means, in addition to in-person public comment. Ren, how do you vote?
No.
Kelly?
No.
Sean?
I am a no.
All right, Catherine?
Yes.
Okay, and I vote yes. So this is 2-3-0. Motion does not pass. All right. So much for that. All right, thank you, everybody. So moving right along to, somebody have a question or comment? Nope. Okay. So moving right along to the next item on the agenda, item C, RENA Reform Public Information and Input Session. That's tomorrow. There's a link there if anybody wants to register. So RENA has been catching some criticism regarding the methodology they use to calculate the regional housing needs assessments. I will make sure to include more detail about that in the next agenda. So for folks interested, you can follow that link and register. Moving right along, unless there's comment or questions. Seeing none and hearing none, to the next item on the agenda. Southern California Association of Governments, also known as SCAG. There are meetings on RENA Reform on Monday, August 1st at 9:30 a.m. and Monday, August 15th at 9:30 a.m. I encourage people to check them out. I am registered and will be attending, and those again address the methodology and the housing needs assessment, because there have been complaints from many regions and many cities that feel tremendously overburdened by the regional housing needs that are being imposed by this process by HCD and RENA. And that's all there is to it. So I think it is a very important and critical process to be paying attention to, because it's going to affect how we live. So Any comments, discussion, questions, thoughts? Ren, yes, sir.
Is that arena meeting at SCAG, is that going to be downtown here at the SCAG office?
I believe I believe all of these are online meetings, but let's see, let me check the link. I'm pretty sure they're online, Ren. So,
Okay,
but,
that's right.
yeah, if you just click the link in the agenda, I thought I got a notification for an online attendance, but I'll double check and let you know after the meeting. So,
Okay.
great.
I'll look it up. Don't worry about it.
Very good. So, moving right along. Discussion on possible future actions for Government Affairs Committee and or the Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council to take. Any thoughts, comments, pieces of legislation, issues you would like to see in particular? All right. Seeing none and hearing none. Anything else people would like to have agendized for the next meeting in September? All right. So our next meeting is going to be Tuesday, September 6th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. With that, I will adjourn the meeting at 8:09 p.m. And thank you all very much for being here. I thought this was productive and I hope you do too. All right.
you.
Have a good night.